Should you be supporting Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election? He's a racist. Oh, no. Might be too much information for one day. There's been so much effort made by the left to portray Donald Trump as a racist. And because the African American as a collective is so underdeveloped, that's the scariest word in the world. He's a racist. Oh, no. Which is amazing because while fearing him being a racist, not knowing the implications, the real world implications of this, I don't know what this actually means. Is Donald Trump about to call you an N-word or burn a cross in your front yard? I don't know. Is he? I have not observed that. But while being so scared of Donald Trump being possibly a racist, which would somehow make him unique among American presidents, we listen to hip hop music where they talk about robbing, stealing, and killing from other Black people. Fascinating. We're going to get into this topic today, for there is much to learn and much to discuss because the topic has been oversimplified in some very evil ways. There will be many lessons. I hope you all have your notepad and take these lessons to heart. But first, let us start with our tradition by showing love to those who show love to us.
Okay, we have Major Mind and Soul said, peace to the saints. Black people did better under Trump than Obama. Trump may have my vote depending on who he goes against. His reckless nature sparks trepidation in our enemies. I like that.
Trump did much more than Obama. In fact, Obama was wrongly called the first Black president. When we say Black in America, what we're typically referring to is the African American, which are those who are the descendants of the, or shall we say, the result of the Mayafa, or the descendants of those who were enslaved in the transatlantic enslavement, or those who might be known as foundational Black Americans, or ADOS. I think they call it ancestor something. They got a lot of terms for it, but you know what I'm talking about. The ones who result from the movie Roots. What's your name, boy? Kunta. What's your name, boy? Toby. Yeah, those people. Now, point is this. Barack Obama is not Black. He's half Black, half white. Black, speaking of the racial category, also known as Negroid. So half Black, half white, which means I don't know, but the variety of Black that he is Kenyan, which is East African. We don't have the same ancestry. That is similar to saying that an Italian is the same as a German. They're both white, but they're different types of white. They don't share the same heritage and ethnicity. This is very important. I say that to say Barack Obama was pawned off on us. We don't want him. He's not one of us. And what's worse, he did more for the LGBTQ lobby than he did for the African American, which makes sense because they're very aggressive and organized, and African Americans are not on the same page. They're not organized, and they're very feminine as a collective, and that's a bad thing. Saints, let us get to this work today, and you will hear certainly some information you've not heard before in terms of data, but more importantly, you'll hear some arguments that you've not heard before, and it'll help you better understand your position if you're an African American and what interests you should be, pursuing vis-a-vis the President of the United States. Also, I need to share with all persons, the way in which the left, which are the controllers of most media, most tech, are manipulating you. And it's actually quite sad and blatant if you pay attention. So let me illustrate for you. I typed in a simple search here. Right here, it says, what has Donald Trump done for Blacks? This is a query in a Google search. We all know that Google is a biased leftist tech corporation. What has Donald Trump done for Blacks? So I just typed that simple query, and this is a fairly objective statement. There's no political leaning in those two words. Donald Trump is a name. Done for Blacks. Blacks are a group. There's nothing political about this. It's an objective question. First one comes up is fact check. And generally speaking, there's an underlying suggestion that something may be dishonest if we have to fact check it. It's done by Politico, which we know to be a liberal entity. It says Trump's policies for Black Americans. I think it might also be wise if you remind me to type in what has Obama done for Blacks, and let's see if the results are organized in a similar way. Okay. But we see the first result is from a liberal outlet, which is fine. It is not actually answering the question. Rather, it is questioning Trump's statement in terms of if it's true. Right here, the subtext is Trump says he's the best president for African Americans. Is that really true? And if you were to click this, you'll find that naturally they object. Secondly, has Trump failed Black Americans? Well, that wasn't the question. The question was not, has he failed Black Americans? And an objective question would have been, how has Trump performed for Black Americans? But to put in the term failed is suggestive. This is a loaded question. This is something that is clearly reeking of bias. So you would ask yourself, if you're using the Google search function, why it is providing these biased results. And generally speaking, when you type a query into Google, it'll pre-populate answers. I'm going to use a question mark after this. And then after this, I'm going to type in Obama just so you can see the difference. And I've not previewed that. I'm curious myself. Third result. What has Trump done for Black people? This is from Vox. We also know Vox is a very liberal outlet. It writes immediately, the subtext says, no, Donald Trump has not been the best president for the Black community. And it goes on. Then you go down. Trump's New Deal for Black America. How's that working? And right here, the subtext is, what do you have to lose? And it goes on and on. And again, it's a negative result. So the first four results are all nay. There's no diversity of opinion. It's all monolithically liberal outlets saying that Donald Trump has not done anything for Black people. I think that's an important thing for you to take note of, how the results are being presented to you. You're asking an objective question. You're not about to get a balanced perspective where it says, here's the pros and cons, but rather Donald Trump lied when he made this statement, and here's all the reasons that he was a bad president for Black people. So what has Donald Trump done for Blacks? So what you understand now is that the information presented to you, you're getting overwhelmingly liberal bias. Now let's put in a question mark to see if that changes the nature of how Google presents the results to us. No, it does not. Okay, cool. So now let's sub out Donald Trump for Barack Obama, and let's see how the results look. Barack Obama. Now we typed in Barack Obama. I want you guys to know something very important, and you guys should say, Marquett, you are a genius. No, really, do pay attention to this. This is critical. When I subbed out the name Barack Obama, the very first result is from the White House, from the White House archives. Archives means it's an old result from 2016. That is about 7 years ago, right? And of course, I would expect that a government source should perhaps link toward the top. That's very reasonable. But let us do a little bit of comparison, because we essentially made the exact same type of query, right? So we put, what has Donald Trump done for Blacks? We put, what has Barack Obama done for Blacks? The White House archive, basically where the Obama administration made their own explanation of what they did for Black people, that came to the top. Well, I put in Donald Trump, and let's see where the White House, because he was president as well, and they would have a White House archive. I'm scrolling. Oh, there it is. Now, someone tell me, what kind of sense does it make that when you type in Barack Obama, what has he done for Black people? The very first source is Barack Obama and his own White House telling their own story of what they have done for Black people. And Google puts that the very first result. Conversely, the exact same question, except it's Donald Trump, and we're looking for the result, the exact same result from the White House website, which is the same White House website because it's .gov. We have to scroll way down to see the Trump administration speak for themselves. So they let the Obama administration speak for themselves, top listing. But the Trump administration, you have to scroll all the way down to uncover it at the bottom of the dust heap. Does that sound fair and objective to you? Doesn't seem fair and objective to me. Doesn't make any sense. We're going to dig in today. Oh, there is much to learn. There is much to learn. So here's Politico, and they write, did Obama fail Black people? And I said Politico is generally a leftist, organization. So we're going to just do a quick click and see what they say. I also think it's worth noting the first result is from the Obama White House. They get to speak for themselves, and then they have a sub result. Then the one under that is from the Barack Obama White House, like a whole separate one. Wow, amazing, very curious. Now I'm just trying to guess. Did Obama fail black people? I'm just trying to guess what they're saying. Let's just scroll down, see if we can find a conclusion paragraph. Oh, here it is. He has not. Didn't have to read long for that. Now, did we? Now, why is it that you never get a pros and cons listing? Wouldn't that be, I don't know, more objective? You never get the pros and cons listing. We're going to get into this today, Saints. You pay close attention. Now, first thing I want to tell you is that the interests of the Black American are unique in the context of the United States. The first dangerous thing that the leftists do is that they confuse you by using the term people of color, which is a comical term because it doesn't mean anything. Let me explain. People of color. People of color include everyone who's not white. Firstly, that's quite a strange categorization, as though if you're not white, you have something in common with everybody. You can be from Sri Lanka, you can be from Brazil, you can be from Puerto Rico, you can be from South Korea, you can be from China, you can be from Laos, you can be from Burma, you can be from India, you can be from Pakistan, you can be from Afghanistan, any of the stands, and you guys all have something in common. Why? Because you're not white. And that means that your life is relatively the same just because you're not white. It's complete lunacy. Furthermore, when you look into the data about the experiences of those who are people of color within the United States of America, you'll find that you have those that are referred to as model minorities, namely the ethnic Asian. We're typically talking about those that are the Chinese, the E's, Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, the E's, Asians in general. They perform fairly well in America. That being said, if they're able to perform well educationally, economically, what do they have in common with the African American or the Native American, as they've been called, the Aboriginals? And the Native American and the African American have exceptionally low levels of educational attainment, whereas the Asians have exceptionally high levels of educational attainment. And in many measures, we'll see that Asians will outperform white children. And the whites are the boogeyman. The whites are the scary ones. The whites are the wrongdoers. Unless they're a white woman, right? If they're a white woman, I mean, they are a minority, even though they're not a minority. They're classified as one, even though numerically they're not. And they're also financially empowered and they have white privilege, but we ignore all of those things. So understand this. When they create this term called people of color, it's a very dangerous term. And if we really understand the aim of it, it actually is something that hurts the low performing minorities, generally the Native American and the African American. And we're speaking of, two fairly clear racial categories. When we speak of the Latino or the Hispanic, as it might be termed on government documentation, this is a very wide category in as much as if you ever watch Telemundo, you get to see all of the white Latinos who are actually white, which is to say they're European in ancestry. They're Caucasians. They might have blue eyes. And then you have the range in Latino, because it's not a racial category, it's an ethnic category, right? So in Latino, you have actual white Latinos. You have Latinos that are actually black, like blacker than me, like Sammy Sosa used to be back in the day. Now, point is this. When they talk about people of color, they're not talking about black people. They're not talking about anyone. It's a meaningless term that is dangerous, that is actually hurtful to black people, and it is also hurtful to white people because it only actually serves to exclude them, and it also serves to underserve those who need serving most. So understand that, number one. Number two, what it does is it disempowers African Americans from actually understanding what their agenda is, you see? Because if you have people of color have an issue of English as a second language being taught well, that's more on the Latino side. Not even for, typical American Latinos. That's for newly arrived Latinos who typically may have arrived through the means of illegal immigration, right? Because the ones who arrive through legal immigration generally are better off financially and generally have higher educational attainment, which is why they were granted acceptance through the legal processes. So that the ESL issue, or English as a second language, or accessibility, those are issues that have nothing to do with African Americans, right? So when we say it's a people of color issue, it's like, who are we talking about? So we need to be specific in general. And we need to do away with this term people of color because it's a lie and it's ridiculous and it's created by leftists, specifically the white liberal female, which is the intellectual vanguard of America's leftist movement. Now let's get deep again. Let's actually hear what people are saying, because I want you to see how there have been attempts to influence the Black people, because the reality of Blacks is that they're still very poorly educated in terms of formal education. And what's worse is the African American has terrible character education, which is why it's necessary for organizations like the Assassin to teach civilization, to teach character, for it is in great lack. And also, they have a lack of knowledge of self. They don't know who they are. On a racial category, we're speaking biologically, and not even on a historical level as to where they come from and what their heritage is. Now, this is that link that I didn't go through because Google buried it so far down. Trump administration accomplishments. Yeah, Google makes it hard to find this link, although the analog, which is the Obama administration accomplishments website on the exact same domain, is very easy to find because it's the first Google search result. Trump administration accomplishments. I think there's a couple of these that are worth highlighting. It says, before the China virus invaded our shores. I like how they call that the China virus. You need to not forget that it's also the America virus, because you got guys like Dr. Fauci who use taxpayer money to fund this kind of a virus. It's quite sick and sad. The other irony is that I thought China was supposed to be our enemy, yet we're collaborating with them to create deadly viruses that basically hurt the entire planet Earth. Shocker. Under Trump, America gained 7 million new jobs, more than 3 times government experts projected. That's impressive. Anytime you do 300%, that's pretty good. Middle class family income increased nearly $6,000, more than 5 times the gains during the entire Obama administration. So that's 5 times as much gain during Obama. That's impressive. The unemployment rate reached 3.5%, the lowest in 50 years. That's impressive. Achieved 40 months in a row of more job openings than job hirings. Okay, that's a strong economy. Jobless claims hit a 50-year low. And this is important because when people are not reporting themselves to be jobless, what it does is it eases pressure on our social welfare systems like food stamps and things like this. It says the number of people claiming unemployment insurance as a share of the population hit its lowest record. So people are not using welfare, food stamps, unemployment insurance. These are all things that allow the economy to thrive because we're not paying out people who are doing nothing. We're not paying out unproductive assets. And in some cases, there's nothing wrong with using these benefits if you stumble upon a hard times, but often people, they take advantage of these systems, especially the welfare system. And this is really important for Black people, in particular this one right here. Incomes rose in every single area in the United States for the first time in nearly every single metro area, which means metropolitan, which is to say city, in every American city for the first time in 3 decades. And this is important because if you understand Black people as a demographic, Black people are primarily populated in cities. And this is why white people like to live in suburbs. It's called white flight. White people used to live in cities. And then when Black people started populating cities pursuing work, then there was a phenomena called white flight, which is basically white people saying, get me away from these people. And then they moved to the suburbs. And that's when the suburbs became a desirable place to live, even though it was inconvenient because you had to commute to work. So anyways, in major cities, incomes went up, and that means Black people's incomes went up because Black people are not suburban peoples. That is the African American. Now, here it is. Delivered a future of greater promise and opportunity for citizens of all backgrounds. So specifically talking in terms of racial categories, unemployment rates for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and those without a high school diploma reached record lows, which is to say, including the history of the country, it's never been lower. That's extraordinary. Unemployment for women hit the lowest rate in 70 years, which this is a strange statistic because, the farther you go back in time, women didn't work. They were homemakers. So that statistic's always going to be shaky. Lifted nearly 7 million people off of food stamps. Now, if that ain't impressive. I don't know what is. He then got 7 million people off the government titty. Shout out. Poverty rates for African Americans and Hispanics reached record lows. That's pretty good. Why the African American and Hispanic are always categorized, it is a curious thing. I don't think it necessarily makes a lot of sense because they're two different groups. It doesn't make any sense to categorize the white and the black or the white and the Asian because they're two different groups. But generally, they're categorized together. And truth be told, I grew up with blacks and Latinos. I feel like Hispanic is a government term. Income inequality, I don't think this is a meaningful metric because you're in a capitalist economy. It's always going to be unequal. It's based on inequality. So that's irrelevant. The bottom 50% of American households saw 40% increase in net worth. Now that is huge. The bottom 50% of America saw a 40% increase in net worth. That's major. That means the poor people are becoming less poor. Wages rose faster for low income and blue collar workers, 16% pay increase. Now, remember, this is under Trump. And during Trump, you're getting a 16% pay increase, but you're not experiencing the inflation that you're getting during Biden. So your money actually, you're getting more money, 16% more, and you weren't getting your money eaten away at by inflation. So you actually have more purchasing power. This is the big one. And I want every black person to remember this. During Trump's administration, and I already spoke to you about the meaning of land being the only true power there is, African American home ownership increased from 41.7% to 46.4% during Trump's administration. So there's a 5% increase among black homeowners. That is something to write home about. This is also critical for the country, the future of the country, brought jobs, factories, and industries back to America. So created more than 1.2 million manufacturing and construction jobs. Construction, I don't know if I'm giving credit for that, but manufacturing is critical. Manufacturing is what allows you to win wars. If you look at our performance in World War II, we're only able to be successful because our consumer economy was converted to a war economy. We're able to produce weapons, spare parts, munitions, etc. So if we don't have manufacturing here, we're going to lose in war. We're not safe. And we generally have all of our manufacturing in China. So that was smart on Trump's part. He writes, put in place policies to bring back supply chain from overseas. This is, again, basically removing all of our production from being in China so that we can operate as an independent sovereign nation. He writes, small business optimism broke 35-year-old record, which is to say that people who are starting businesses or running small businesses, people like us, everyday people, we believe that we can be successful during that Trump administration. And that's really important. And one thing I've noticed in my travels abroad, particularly in Europe, is the Europeans are not an optimistic people. They're very doom and gloom. They over-rely on the government. They don't think that they deserve freedom or can be successful in starting a business. They all want to get a 9 to 5. Not even a 9 to 5. Europeans are lazy. They want to get like a 10 to 3, you dig, and then live off the government. It's ridiculous. The Dow closed above 20,000 for the first time in 2017 and topped 30,000 in 2020, which is to say the stock market was juking during Trump's administration. S&P 500 and NASDAQ repeatedly hit record highs. Pretty good. Now, what we could hope for, now what we're seeing right now during Biden is the opposite. The stock market has been in the toilet during the entire Biden administration. Best thing you can do is buy stock cheaply and pray to God that Biden doesn't get a second term. Because I tell you what would happen if you buy stock right now during this Biden administration, you hold on to it, and then Biden does not get a second term. Anyone who comes in after Biden is going to be better than Biden. You're going to get some real money.
On Cash App, we have B-Man said, tuition, vital information here. Peace to the saints.
I appreciate those who recognize it and show what they know. Rebuilding and investing in rural America. Now, that's curious. This definitely doesn't apply to black people, but let's see what he says, and we'll go on to the next thing. Signed an executive order on modernizing the regulatory framework for agricultural biotechnology products. Okay. Strengthen America's rural economy by investing $1.3 billion. That's not much money when you consider how much we've given to Ukraine. I'm not impressed.
Just for fun said, I had English teachers bringing us articles about how Trump is bad, the wage gap. All the info given to us pointed to one direction, indoctrination.
It is total indoctrination. And the saddest thing in America is when you have people suggest that natural things are wrong. A wage gap is natural. Equality is unnatural. You might have a brother or a sister. You're not the same height. Inequality is natural. This is a natural state. Capitalism is based on inequality. And capitalism works the best because it's based on the realities of humankind, which is to say that you know that there's some people who want to work harder than you and they should earn more money than you. There's some people who want to work more intelligently than you do and they should reap the benefits of that. It doesn't make sense that we would, have some like people run a foot race 50 yards and the people who come in last place get the same reward as the people who train to come in first place. So this whole wage gap or income inequality, like this is nonsense. These are natural states. Income inequality is a natural state. A wage gap is a natural state. What we need to focus on is how can you be happy with the income that you do have? How can you make sure that your happiness is not tied to income? African Americans and the economy under Trump, and that really should be the only thing that Black people care about is the economy. They talk about racism like Trump is going to show up at your job calling you an N-word. Black people are funny. Democrats may not have noticed how the Black community benefited from this economy, but Black voters sure did. It has been 6 months since President Trump left the White House, and the Democrats are still race baiting. Former President and Republican Representative Byron Donald was yet another target of Democrats' wrath in this respect after he was denied entry into the Congressional Black Caucus because of his continued support for President Trump. That's sad. That is truly sad. Saints, I think I've heard enough of this sickness that we have in our country. I'll give you guys some time to send in your comments as we wind down. This shirt you cannot get in white, but you can get it in the other colors, military green, sand. I think we probably got to, of course, have it in black as well. And I think this is linked in the description. And this is stitched. You dig? This is not a print on. This is high quality stitching. And also, it's not currently available, like easy to find on the website, but we did put on the community tab the Boss University. If you want to get the pre-order, we're obviously going to increase the price when it's ready to go. And I like doing pre-orders because it makes things accessible for folks. For young people who might be in college, people might be putting together their financial picture. So that's pretty cool. It's a nice thing to be able to do. But after that, if you're late, hey, you're late. You snooze, you lose. And at some point we should probably acknowledge all the folks who got the Boss University on pre-order, the long list. I don't know if we got time like that. Maybe acknowledge some of them. Oh yeah, and one thing I will be doing for you guys who got the pre-order is I'll set up a webinar and I'll go through the whole course with you before it releases, and that'll be special for you guys. So it'll take some time because it's a very long, involved course. You dig? You're gonna get more value than you could have ever anticipated. So you're gonna have to clear out a day, but I'll be there. I'll take you through the course, answer any of your questions, and you'll get full value. I think that session alone will be more than the value you pay for the course.